Good afternoon, folks. If you could please take a seat or just stand aside, whatever, if you could, please. I'd like to welcome to the annual Candidates Forum given by the League of Women Voters of Dedham, Westwood, and Walpole. Of course, Westwood is here today. The format will be that the candidates who are uncontested, who are here, there's a few of them here, will give a short statement of about a minute, just telling you what they do and so on, and why you should vote for them. And then we'll bring up the contested candidates, and they will each have 2 minutes to speak, and then we will open it up to questions. Now, the questions are not taken from the floor. We have cards and pencils back there. If you haven't picked any up, then feel free to go back and get some now. And then you can give them to either myself or Marcia over here. We just don't want duplicate questions. So, our moderator today is Wendy Manns. She's done this before, and she's done a very good job for us. So, the other thing I want to mention is that we are a very small group in the League of Women Voters, but we do very important work. And we would really love it if any of you are interested in joining us. Although it is the League of Women Voters, it is open to all. And I believe it's 16 and up. So even if you have kids in this day of children now, I shouldn't say children, let's say young adults getting active, please encourage them to look into the League of Women Voters as a way to learn and experience the political process. So without any further ado, I would like to bring up Mary Macy Phelps, if that's okay. Why don't you
go first?
Yeah.
1 minute. All right, in 1 minute or less. Hi, I'm Mary Macy Phelps. I've had the honor to serve you as a library trustee for the past 4.5 years. My husband Bruce and I, many of you know, have lived in Westwood for 27 years. We raised 3 children here, put them all through the public schools. I've worked in the software industry for about 35 or so years. I've served on numerous town and community groups, including 7 years on the FinCom. Why am I here as a library trustee? I have a strong belief in lifelong learning and the ongoing and evolving role that public libraries play in supporting that for all citizens. I believe it's my job as a trustee both to advocate for library services and to serve as a steward of your tax dollars. As a trustee, I've worked actively on a number of initiatives. A few of those are, we hired a new director. We developed a 5-year plan for the library. We're working now to bridge a crucial gap in services to teenagers in town and preteens. And we have regularly reviewed and reaffirmed services at the Islington Branch Library. I respectfully request your vote on April 24th to continue that work. Thank you very much for your time. Please vote on April 24th. Did I make it? Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's it. Great. Now, I know that Patrick Ahern is here, and he's going to speak, but I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't know everybody here and all of the candidates by sight, and we had a big crowd, so I didn't get to find other people. So I just want to ask if Alyssa Gordette is here. She's uncontested, so she didn't have to come. Or James Gavin. Nope. So I guess that's it for uncontested, other than Patrick, or Pat, as we all call him. If you could come up, please, Pat. It's official on the ballot.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Pat Ahern. I was privileged to serve as a member of the Board of Selectmen for 18 years. It was truly one of the most rewarding things I could have done. And this spring, a good friend of mine, Mr. Antonellis, decided not to run for re-election. And several people called me and said, we think you should run for the Sewer Commission. By way of background, I was a public health major at UMass, so we studied things like sewers and its relationship to public health, so this is right up my alley. When I was on the board, we had a number of selectmen, we had a number of issues dealing with the sewer commissioners and ensuring the integrity of the system. I had someone earlier today ask me if I was running because this is the year of the sequel in Hollywood, and this is my sequel, and it's not. It's something I truly want to do, and you know, one of my heroes, or not heroes, or well, I guess idols, and gentleman I was privileged to wait on when I was a waiter in college was Tip O'Neill. And Tip O'Neill used to say that when the wind blows hardest, you want a tall oak there, not a young sapling. I've been called an oak in terms of size, but I've never been called a sapling. So I hope that you'll vote for me on April 24th to be your next sewer commissioner. It would be a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Wendy, if you want to come up, we can get started. This is a very exciting year. We actually have contested races this year, which is a good thing for democracy. So also, contestants, I did want to say one more thing. Sheila over here has got her lovely little orange card. We'll give you a 30-second warning when you are almost finished. And these funny-looking things on the tables are microphones. I know they don't look like it, but they are. And they work, as you can tell. So anyways, thank you very much.
All right. Good afternoon. I was really pleased to be asked to come back to your candidates forum because you always have a good turnout and interesting candidates. So I want to start with moderator. Our two candidates for moderator are Christopher McCune. Am I pronouncing that right? McCune. All right. And James O'Sullivan. Can we have them both come on up? The way we'll do it is each of you will have 2 minutes in which to make a speech, and then questions from the audience will come up to me via cards, and I'll be able to read them out to you. So let's start with Mr. McCune. Tell us in 2 minutes why you would like to be moderator.
Alrighty. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum, all the voters who turned out, and all my fellow candidates for throwing the hat in the ring, including Jim. I'm running for election for town moderator, and I want to tell you why and who I am and why I believe I'm qualified. I grew up in Norwood. I'm a veteran, having spent 9 years in submarines in the U.S. Navy. I'm a graduate of Northeastern University. I've lived in Westwood for 18 years with my wife, Lisa. We raised 2 kids, Maddie and Griffin, on Lorraine Road. They're both graduates of Westwood High School. For 8 of those 18 years, I was a full-time employee of the town of Westwood. I was the University Ave redevelopment project manager, the economic development officer, the veteran services officer, and the Colburn School redevelopment project manager, which I plan to point to with those shades are down. Prior to that, I served on the Cable and Technology Advisory Board, the Conservation Commission with my old friend Joe Prevotera, and the University Ave Steering Committee. I'm a 17-year Hale Reservation Board member and just finished. I'm the immediate past president, served in that role for 4 years. I'm a current mentor at the Veterans Drug Treatment Court in Dedham District Court, and I'm still active in the Veteran Services Office here in Westwood. So why do I believe I'm qualified to serve as your moderator? First, I've chaired numerous meetings throughout my entire professional career, large and small, and most importantly, I've chaired contentious meetings. And the ability to maintain decorum and civility in an emotional, impassioned crowd, I think, is actually a key point to support the role of moderator. Second, during my employment with the town, I was actively involved in planning and preparation for multiple town meetings. I drafted numerous warrant articles. I presented those to the referring boards and then to the Finance and Warrant Commission for their ultimate recommendation to town meeting, and then I'd present them on town meeting floor. I interacted with virtually every town board and committee in that period of time, and I gained a deep understanding of how the town works, but specifically how town meeting works, both in the planning and in the conduct. And so I believe this provides a unique skill set for the position of moderator, and I hope you'll agree with me and you'll ask for your vote on April 24th. Thank you.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
My turn. My name's Jim O'Sullivan. Please vote for me for moderator because I'm the most qualified and experienced candidate. The moderator runs town meeting and appoints the members of the FinCom, the Permanent Building Committee, and the Personnel Board. Starting with more.
Can everyone hear Mr. O'Sullivan? Because if you can all hear him, then we won't worry about the mics. Go ahead. All right.
Starting with the more visible role, as chair of several committees, I know the importance of preparing for any meeting. The moderator must know what the issues are, make sure any presentations are loaded up and ready to go, and who's the lead petitioner of any article. and the moderator has to remain neutral on all issues. As an attorney for over 34 years and having devoted hundreds of hours of volunteer work on boards and committees here in town and elsewhere, I have the training and experience to serve as moderator. I had the honor to serve as chair of the Westwood Council on Aging and Board of Health, as well as the UMass Boston Alumni Association, to name just a few. And we've had contentious issues on each of those boards and committees just within the past year. But the job of moderator is different than simply chairing a meeting. In most committees, informal discussion is a good thing, but not a town meeting. Town meeting speakers address the moderator only, just like in court, where you only address the judge. So my experience as an attorney gives me the advantage. I'm in court almost every day. Mostly what I do is I represent elder services agencies, like HESCO, that investigate abuse of the elderly, and I take their cases into court for them. The moderator must know when it's time to bring an article to a vote. Once the vote's ready to be taken, the moderator explains what the vote is, and what a yes vote means, and what a no vote means. And when the vote comes from FinCom on indefinite postponement, the moderator has to explain clearly but quickly what that means, particularly to people who are new to town meeting. You've been to town meeting, you know how confusing that can be, even if you've been there many times. If you're new, you have to be able to explain it so people can understand it. We have a well-run town. We have many people qualified to serve on those three boards that I mentioned. We don't need one-issue crusaders. We need perceptive, qualified people who are willing to work diligently and thoroughly. The moderator must be a good judge of character. My experience gives me the skills to read body language and to really get a sense of what people's real motivations are. My skills as a conciliator, I can use those to help people relax in a stressful or a tense situation. And this is just a brief summary of my background. I'm glad to talk to any of you about all the other work I've done, but 2 minutes is a short time. So please vote for me on April 24th.
Okay, I had some excellent questions here, but I think the candidates have addressed some of them. But here is one. We'll go back to Mr. McCune. How would you like constituents to contact you with concerns?
I currently have a website up now that I intend on keeping up, as well as the moderator's website, our page on the town website. I'd be open to people contacting me, telephone, email, text, whatever is convenient for them. I'm readily available, and they can contact me any way they'd like.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
Best way to reach me is my home number. I have a cell phone, but it's off all the time. I'm in court almost every day, and Judge Roberts would take my head off if it went off in court. You can reach me at the office, but we're in the book. The home number is the best number to reach me.
And another question for each of you. Again, we'll go back around. What would be your process for appointing people for the various committees? Mr. McHugh.
I've thought about that, and I think that in each case, I'd want to talk to the people in town who are involved with that committee, the current committee members, and get a feel for what they think is needed, and then try to identify people who could fill that role. I think the biggest issue, quite frankly, is the Finance and Warrant Commission. Participation in that committee is a real time-consuming thing, particularly around town meeting time. And so finding people who are truly committed to putting in that time and effort is important. I'm getting the signal here to stand up. Oh, speak up. Sorry. Finding people who are able to put in the time and effort it takes in the Finance Commission, I think, is probably one of the bigger challenges. But I think in dealing with the folks who are currently active in town and can help identify people will help solve that.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
All right, again, I agree with Chris. First, you have to identify people willing to put the time into each of those committees. I'd be looking for people from diverse backgrounds so that we have a broad perspective for any committee that they address. On the personnel board, probably people with collective bargaining experience to help Mike Gillette and the rest of the town negotiate the union contracts. And on the permanent building committee, I'd be looking for people who are familiar with public bidding.
Okay, excellent. Two excellent candidates. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And,
Thank you. Do we get a close? Do we get a 1 minute close?
I beg your pardon?
The letter said we had a 1 minute closing.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Tell you that, go ahead.
Oh, all right. I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to. Okay, Mr. O'Sullivan, you go first with close, and then Mr. McHugh.
All right, I wanted to leave you with a couple of points. First, the moderator must be neutral in all issues, must give everyone who wishes to speak an opportunity to be heard, and give people the chance to present whatever materials they have so that all who attend town meeting are better informed to make a decision. Second, I know the town charter, I know parliamentary procedure, so I know how to run a thorough but efficient town meeting. Third, the moderator must be even-tempered and thick-skinned. Sometimes these warrant issues get contentious. People get frustrated, emotions run high. They're going to take it out on somebody. Because they can only address it to the moderator, they're going to take it out on you. If you lose your temper, you've lost control of the meeting. I don't lose my temper. And finally, this is not a ceremonial position. You can't just show up at 7:30 and expect things to go smoothly. It takes a lot of work preparing for town meeting. I ask you to take a look at all the volunteer work that I've done in the town. Talk to anybody who's worked with me. They'll tell you I work hard, I'm thorough, and I have integrity. I'm fair and honest, and when I take on a job, it gets done, and it gets done well. So thank you. Please vote for me on April 24th.
Thank you. One of the questions I expected actually was, why are you running for moderator? And so I thought I'd tell you at least one of the reasons. There are multiple reasons, but one is when I first came to town in 2001, my wife and I went to our first ever open town meeting, and it was the night of the high school override vote to build the new high school, and the place was packed. I don't know whether it was 1,800 or 1,500 or 2,000. We were way in the back in the gym. And Steve Gradette was the moderator, and it was raw, pure democracy. And I looked at my wife and I said, I want that job someday. And I've wanted it ever since. My experience with the town as I went through, I think gives me a real strong background in how town meeting is run and needs to be run. I couldn't agree with Jim more about maintaining civility and decorum. At the end of the day, we happen to live in a town where we've got a very engaged citizenry, which means town meeting is usually fairly well attended and fairly democratic. And I look forward to the opportunity to serve as your moderator, keeping it that way. Thank you very much.
Oh, let's grab this on.
Oh, yeah.
I have more cards and pencils if anybody has questions. Raise your hand.
Okay, the next office we're addressing is Planning Board. We have 3 candidates for 2 positions. If they would come up, we have Stephen Olenoff, Deborah Conant, and Christopher Pfaff. Sorry, being out of town, I don't know which is from out of town. I don't know which is which, so we'll start with the gentleman on the right-hand side. Which gentleman are you?
Steve Olenoff.
All right. If you will start with your 2-minute opening.
Hang on. My name is Steve Olenoff. I'm running for re-election to the Planning Board where I've served for 27 years. Obviously, I'm running based upon my many years of experience and service to the town. I also serve on the Westwood Land Trust, represent the town on a half-dozen regional planning organizations, and I'm currently chair of the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee and vice chair of the Pedestrian Bicycle Safety Committee, which I helped found. Currently, because of member turnover, there's a real need for experience on the Planning Board. I now have more than 3 times as much experience as the rest of the Planning Board combined. My not succeeding in this election will result in only 2 years average experience per member on the board. So experience does count. And it's much more importantly, we need people on the Planning Board who recognize the need for economic development in Westwood. We need to continue what I've been doing, promoting economic development, protecting the environment, maintaining community character, and encouraging walking and bicycling. A good example is University Station, which has resulted in the town fixing playing fields, building a new police station and a new fire station, all without an increase in our taxes. The project has improved stormwater runoff, protected and enhanced our drinking water supply, and provided new park areas and multi-use paths, as well as new stores for shopping. I've been amazed at the number of jobs created, with some of the restaurants alone employing over 100 people. Throughout this process, we work closely with all the surrounding neighbors to mitigate any problems and have the developer fund traffic calming measures and traffic improvements throughout the area. Being on the planning board requires listening to everyone involved and working out solutions that balance the needs of the environment, the town, the residents, and the applicant. We must always protect public safety, preserve our natural resources, and enable economic growth. We can't always get a perfect development that satisfies everyone, but I've worked hard over the years to achieve this balance. With your help in this election, I hope to continue to do so.
All right, Mr. Pfaff, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Paff. I live on Everett Street with my wife Deb and our 3 sons, Drew, Mitch, and Jake. We've lived in Westwood for 22 years and have really developed a deep emotional connection with this town. All of our boys went through the public school system at Downey, Thurston, and the high school. Our youngest, Jake, is currently a sophomore at the high school. Our middle son, Mitchell, is a freshman at Trinity College, and our oldest, Drew, is a junior at Fairfield University. I have experience in construction management, property appraisal, carpentry, and building. I understand how development works. I was on the Westwood Little League board for 6 years and was the project coordinator for the rebuild of the field at Morrison Park for the Little League. Most recently, I've been working with our town government as an appointed member of the Finance and Warrant Commission. I also serve on Westwood's Municipal Buildings Task Force and the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. In addition to these committees, I served on the Public Safety Task Force, where we orchestrated site selection, design, and build of our new Islington Fire Station and our new police stations. Being a member of the Planning Board starts with an interest and concern with our town's growth. But being a positive contributor to the Planning Board requires so much more. Keeping an open mind when reviewing each application, focusing on maintaining the process of an application, anticipating future needs of the town, and creating new zoning amendments and bylaws, and understanding how to write these new zoning amendments and bylaws are crucial. And they're crucial skill sets and attributes needed in a candidate for the position of planning board. I have 5 years' experience on the planning board. I served from 2012 to 2017. 2 of those years I served as its chairman. I developed and honed those required skill sets when I worked on the development of the 3 new prime dealerships and the new Shell gas station on Route 1, the Hogan Tire Building, BB's Bakery, the Stagecoach Plaza, multiple subdivisions, and the development of University Avenue, all of which I was on the planning board for. I feel I've been a positive contributor to the town of Westwood, and I'd like to continue my service as a member on the planning board. To do this, I need your support and your vote on April 24th. Thank you.
And Ms. Conant? Yeah, yes, they're all live, I believe. Mhm.
Thank you. My name is Debbie Conant, and I'm a 14-year resident of Westwood. I moved here with my husband and my 4 school-aged children for the same reason that many of you moved here. I have a Master of Science from Boston College. I'm a certified nurse practitioner, and I'm also a medical legal consultant. My experience is that I've attended 2 years planning board meetings. I've done an in-depth study of bylaws, developed and presented petition articles at town meeting, had a review of Mass General Law related to zoning, and I'm also a member of an advisory board for elder care, where accountability and compliance are major components. One of the reasons why I chose to run for planning board were for some concerns that I had. One of them was ensuring that the character and charm of the town would be maintained while still promoting development. I had concerns with traffic, safety, classroom sizes, quality of life, the present pace of development. I found that there were no bylaws to address the aesthetic standards of property like we see down on Washington Street. There's been an increase in zoning bylaws over the last few years without significant deletion and review to clean up the loopholes and those that are not within the best interest of the town. I found that it was difficult for residents to make a change, that there was placement of hot topic items towards meetings at the end of meetings, and that is not representative of community involvement. And I felt that there was no real reference to the master plan when doing development. So with collaboration of the planning board and the town, the changes I'd like to see are review and clean up of bylaws to ensure the aesthetics, character, and charm are maintained, preservation of the history of the town while still promoting economic growth, bylaw with a tiered penalty system to ensure maintaining the aesthetics of buildings, development control where size and scale are not consistent with surroundings in town, promotion of conversation and representation of residents, development in line with the master plan. And I ask for your vote on April 24th. Thank you.
I have some good ones, actually. All right, each of you, I think, has addressed a general vision, so I'm going to, I've received some quite specific questions, so I think I'll go with this. And I'll start with Mr. Olenoff. The question is, small businesses require access to be successful. 3 options for access have been mentioned: walking, taking the bus, and driving, parking at the business. Which one would you support and would best support the businesses and long-term success of those businesses in town?
Well, all of them. We talk about multimodal transportation, and that means walking, bicycling, and hopefully one day we'll have shuttle bus service in the town. I've been promoting that for years. Studies have been done showing that it is feasible to have a shuttle bus down High Street all the way, and then at that time when the study was done, they didn't even have University Station. Now it could go to University Station. They just said the 2 railroad stations. That's something I like to see. We can't all rely upon the automobile, especially the single occupancy automobile. That's a big part of the problem with the traffic we have today. Get more people walking, get more people biking, get some shuttle bus service. Now, it doesn't mean everyone has to take it. It's just the few people that take it that need to, gets those cars off the road, and makes it better for everyone else.
Okay. Let's go next to Mr. Pfaff.
What were the 3 modes? Did you mention?
Walking, taking the bus, or driving, parking at the business.
Well, all 3, I think we find ourselves doing, each of us, at any given time. It depends on where it happens. But as Steve mentioned, the shuttle bus idea is something that we implemented at University Station, where the employees have opportunity to take this instead of driving their car on our roads. Islington has been another area where parking has been a concern, but it's also an area where we have bus service traveling up and down Washington Street. We have the train station very close by, the Islington's named stop. And it's an important thing to consider when we consider a project on the planning board. One of the major concerns is parking. We can have the most beautiful drawing of a building, and if you can't park all the people that are going to work in that building, it really doesn't matter. We had a number of incidents early on at University Station where they drew nice pictures to placate the town and the planning board and the selectmen, and in reality they had no intention of ever building that because they couldn't park it. Parking is always, it's the bane of existence for every developer. I think a great observation by the current developer of Islington was to create underground parking under the building that's been done. It didn't involve any more impermeable surface in the development of a new parking lot within Islington, and that's a concern. Open green space is a concern, so they all dovetail into one another. I would add skateboarding to that list for the local high school kids. Whatever it takes, get across town in the safest manner possible. I support the looking into the sidewalk to connect Islington to 109 down Gay Street. At least research it, see how feasible it is. There's a lot of things we can do as a community, and everything is on the table as far as I'm concerned. We can't discount anything, including driving our own cars and parking.
Okay, Ms. Conan.
In terms of the three methods, I think that in a perfect world, all three of them would be ideal. But the way the town centers are set up, I'm not sure that walking and biking is not going to be a safety issue, especially as we're increasing the traffic on both sides of town. I think traffic, automobiles would be the major link to getting businesses to succeed. And as both of my opponents have said, parking's going to be an issue. And if we don't find that parking, then the businesses aren't going to survive. So we have to somehow find that balance. I know that Dedham is running into that problem right now. They're bringing in more restaurants, and they just don't have the parking to accommodate them. We want to see success. We don't want to see failure. So we have to find a way to make sure that we let these businesses succeed. Thank you.
All right, with my next question, I'm going to start with Mr. Pfaff, and we'll move around from that point in the circle. One of the audience asks, why does the planning board grant so many waivers?
Well, I think it'd be hard-pressed to find an application that goes through from start to finish without at least the inquiry of a waiver. Waivers are never given as a way to make the project work. They're given to make a project work better. So a developer can't come in and say, well, I know your parking requirements say this, but I can't do that, I still want to build this. If they can't do it, they can't do it. That's not a waiver they're going to be granted. But if they can show if the project will be better if I can do this, then the planning board is open to listening to that. So it's always, the only time you give a waiver really is when you're able to make the project better, and you're not going to sacrifice a crucial element of the project. So in other words, if the planning board thinks you're cutting back your parking so much to the extent that it doesn't work, then we're not going to allow it. But if we say we want 100 spots, but you're at 94, we'll listen to it, we'll consider it, and we'll see about other opportunities where we can bring in parking somewhere else or an adjacent lot or something like that. So it's really just to make it a better project for the town. And you can't be so stringent on a number all the time, because every project has its own nuances. You know, if you don't assess those nuances on each individual basis, then you're not doing your job on the planning board. It's not just by rote and just reading the rule. You have to apply common sense and experience to each application.
Ms. Conant, do you have a theory as to why so many waivers are granted?
Well, having not been on the planning board, I'm not privy to a lot of the waivers. However, following the developments that's been occurring in Islington, I know that getting input from the residents to help make that decision is crucial. I know that there was a lot of concern about that 3-story building that went up, and the fact that a waiver was given despite the fact that they still didn't have the square footage. So I think that we really need to work more with the residents to ensure that these waivers are appropriate and they're going to maintain the quality of life that these residents have moved here for. Thank you.
And Mr. Olenoff?
Some people seem to think that the developer asks for a waiver and we just grant it. Well, you can ask some of the developers whether it's tough to get a waiver from me. But there are different types of waivers. First, a waiver can only be given if it's specified in the zoning bylaw, and they also specify what the reasons that we must give for why we grant it. Some are just more almost formalities. For example, a cell tower wants a waiver for doing a traffic study. That makes sense because it's not appropriate. There are other waivers we just don't grant at all, only under special circumstances. For instance, the 500-foot dead-end road, that's a very important one. They have to prove to us first that they can build a through road and do it legally, and before we would even think of granting them the 500-foot. And even then, we require an emergency access, or in one case where the emergency access route was not desirable, we required sprinkler systems in all the buildings. So and the third kind of waiver is one where the builder is really getting an advantage. For instance, they want a waiver of the sidewalk requirement on two sides of the streets, in new subdivisions. And in the past, the planning board might have just given that away, but I said, wait, you know, what, he's getting off for free, all of that cost, so how about providing a sidewalk somewhere else in lieu of that one? In fact, I finally got the planning board to adopt the policy, and it's in our subdivision rules and regulations, that if a developer wants a waiver on that one side of the street sidewalk, they either have to provide another sidewalk or provide an equivalent amount of money to build a sidewalk somewhere else. And we put that in the new sidewalk fund. We already have money in it to build new sidewalks in other parts of town.
Okay, our last question is a question we're actually asking of all candidates, and I'll start with Ms. Conant. How would you like constituents to contact you with concerns if you were a member of the board?
Anyone can contact me at my home. I have, or my email address. Many of my door knockers, I've had my phone number and contact information there. And I'm always open to listening to people and getting their perspectives on what's occurring in the town and what they'd like to see occur in the town. So, thank you.
And Mr. Olenoff, beg your pardon.
Believe it or not, I don't get very many calls. I get a little jealous when some of the members say, I've gotten a lot of calls on this. No one calls me, so go ahead. Give me a call. My name is right in the phone book.
All right. And Mr. Papp?
Through the years, I think a lot of people have come up to me at various sporting events around town when my sons are playing, and I'm more than happy to, much to my wife's chagrin, talk about issues going on in town. I'm happy to talk with anyone. I fielded many phone calls on my cell phone, my home phone, email, text. I'm available. It doesn't matter how you reach out to me. We are representatives of the town residents, and we need to stay in touch with the people. If there is an issue concerning somebody and they need some direction, I'm happy to provide that for them.
This last question, I think, is just a simple factual question, so either of the gentlemen could maybe answer it. Are residents invited to take part in public session in every planning board? And every planning board meeting?
What?
Let me say that again. Are residents invited to take part in public session in every planning board meeting?
You want to answer first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I figured this is a factual question, not a political one.
Yes, I mean,
right?
that's democracy. Every meeting's an open meeting. Even meetings we have, sometimes we meet with just the developer and all the engineers. You can come if you can find out about it, but all meetings are public. We have public participation in all meetings. We have to go to the planning board first before we get to the people, and I know some people get impatient waiting because sometimes things get pretty involved, but we listen to everyone at every meeting, and you know, we do take into consideration what people have to say.
Okay, Mr. Pfaff, you'll be the first with your 1-minute closing statement.
Okay, thank you. I understand the importance of this board to Westwood. I know how it works. I know how to read a set of building and topographical plans. I know and understand the building and development process. Most importantly, I believe my experience on the planning board, the Finance and Warrant Commission, multiple task forces and committees, and living and raising a family in Westwood for 22 years has given me an accurate understanding of how to achieve the balance of forward-thinking adaptability and the preservation of Westwood's charm that made us all want to move here. Westwood is an amazing town, and I've enjoyed living here and watching how it's grown. I think we're headed in a positive direction, and I believe I could help contribute to our future growth. I'm not running for this position because I'm unhappy with the direction the town is going. I'm not looking to change the direction of this town. I like what this town has done over the last 20-plus years. Generally speaking, I think this town has done a very good job of putting the most qualified people in positions that best utilize their skill sets and result in the Westwood that we love today. I'm hoping to be a part of Westwood's continued growth and development. I'd like to continue my service to Westwood as a member of the Planning Board, and to do this, I need your vote on April 24th. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Conant?
I believe in accountability, transparency, and representation, participating in promoting smart growth that doesn't impact the quality of life of its residents. As quoted in the Smart Growth Principle, smart growth is about building a future for a community that everyone can participate in, and gathering the ideas, feedback, and support of everyone in a community is the only way to do that. The common thread for smart growth is that the needs of every community and the strategies to address them are best defined by the people who live and work there. This process is not only inclusive and equitable, it will also give projects built-in support and staying power. The Planning Board's mission is to protect the natural resources, safety, and aesthetic character of Westwood. There needs to be a concerted effort to balance the cost-benefit ratio between developers and residents to ensure this happens. I will be committed to being the voice of the residents and respectfully ask for your vote on April 24th. Thank you.
And Mr. Olenoff?
As I said before, experience counts. My 27 years of service on the planning board means I bring a broad range of skills and a long institutional knowledge of zoning and planning to the board. I try to cover every detail. In fact, I've often been accused of being a detailed person, which I admit. But details matter. When everything's done correctly, no one notices the details. But when things are done wrong, then everyone notices the details. Well, I know I sometimes go into too much details at meetings and bore everyone, but I do try to fix things now between meetings. At last Wednesday's meeting, I spoke with our peer review engineer and worked out the best angle for a crosswalk so it would be both safe and people would actually use it. So details are important, experience is important, and we must continue to focus on what the planning board must do. Protect public safety, protect our environment, and enable economic growth. I seek your vote so that I can continue on the planning board for 27 more years. Oh, no, 3's enough.
Thank you very much to all three of you.
Thank you.
All right, and next up are the candidates for school committee. They are Diane McCarthy and Maya Plotkin. 2 candidates for 1 position. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know which one of you is which, so
Diane.
Maya and Diane, okay. All right. All right, 2-minute opening statement. Let's start with Ms. McCarthy.
Hi, my name is Diane McCarthy. I'm running for school committee. I want to spend a couple of minutes introducing you to me and explaining why I think my unique skill set would benefit the school committee. My family and I have lived in Westwood for over 10 years. We have twin 15-year-olds. Many of you know Noah, who you've seen on the sports fields for the last 10 years, and he now plays on the freshman baseball team. He's played on the freshman basketball team. And some of you know Riley, who designed this amazing logo that you see on all of my material. And you might have seen them out front when you came in. I'm a healthcare lawyer. I worked in a major law firm and served in the general counsel offices of academic medical centers. Currently, I serve as general counsel for the Center for Health Information and Analysis. Before I got my law degree, though, I was trained as a clinical social worker. I worked in community mental health for 10 years, and I continue to be involved in mental and behavioral health issues by my service on the board of Dimmick Community Health Center. Finally, I'm a committed educator. I teach at Boston University Law School, and I've mentored law students for the last 10 years. I believe that this unique set of skills will make a contribution to the school committee. First, I think that my combination of legal and social work training fosters a consensus-based decision-making approach that will be very helpful as we struggle with the issues related to the elementary school building project. It's a process that will really need consensus decision-making, and I think I can be helpful. Second, I believe my social work training will be very helpful as we as a community look at and try to solve and identify the behavioral health challenges our kids face today. And this includes the violence in schools that we all are very concerned and worried about. And lastly, I believe my skills as an educator will help to foster an open communication between the schools and the community and the parents. I hope that tells you a little bit more about me and that you would consider supporting me for school committee. Thank you.
Ms. Plotkin.
Hi, my name is Maya Plotkin, and I am running for school committee. I grew up in Westwood, starting at the Shan School in kindergarten and graduating from Westwood High in 1991. After high school, I went to Bowdoin College in Maine, and from there I went to Northwestern University School of Law, where I got my JD. After law school, I moved back to Boston and started practicing commercial law, real estate law, which I've been doing for 17 years. Currently, I'm in the Office of the General Counsel at MIT, where I am responsible for all of the Institute's academic facilities and buildings. I moved back to Westwood in 2006 with my husband to start our family. Our oldest child, Malik, is in the 6th grade at the middle school. Our daughter, Senna, is in 4th grade at the Martha Jones, and our youngest, Zaid, is also at the Martha Jones in kindergarten. Also, since moving back to Westwood, I've been involved in the community. I was a member of the Westwood Land Trust for 2 years. I served as the PTO treasurer for the Martha Jones PTO for 4 years. And I've been with the Westwood Food Pantry since 2010, and I currently serve as its president. I'm running for school committee because I think I can really make a difference in the lives of the students and in the community. Specifically, I have 3 areas of interest. First, the elementary school building project. This is in front of the school committee. It's an important project for the entire town, and this is also exactly what I do for a living. So I feel like I could really add value to the town, to the process, as a member of the school committee. Second, security in schools. It's on the mind of all of us right now. And I think I'm very excited to work with the school committee and the town as well to review not just the physical security of the buildings, but also the social and emotional health of our students, because I don't think you can have safe schools unless you have both of those. Finally, I'd like to improve community engagement with the school committee, specifically at the elementary level, which I feel has really been underrepresented at the school committee. So that's who I am, that's what I'm passionate about, and I hope to have your support in the election on Tuesday, April 24th. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Plotkin and go back this time. Good questions. What are your key concerns or goals for any changes to the elementary schools in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I mentioned the elementary school building project, and if this isn't something that you know a lot about, I encourage you to learn more. Currently, 3 of our elementary schools, Sheehan, Deerfield, and Hanlon, have serious problems with the buildings. They're all really old. They're from the 1940s and the 1950s. And if you took the building tours that the district had offered, you'd see things like rotting pipes, classrooms that are inaccessible unless you go through another classroom. Our students are learning in the halls. The Sheehan school doesn't have hot water on the 3rd floor. Sheehan and Hanlon are not ADA accessible. So something needs to be done about these 3 schools. Luckily, Westwood has been invited into the Massachusetts School Building Authority process. So we have the opportunity to have whatever project we come up with, to have almost 30% reimbursed by the state of the cost of that project. This is an important initiative that the school committee is facing, and it needs the support of the town. This isn't a question of should we do this or should we not. We have to do something about the schools. So this school building project, especially with the MSBA support, is critical to us moving forward and supporting the amazing education that we have been provided within this town.
Ms. McCarthy, what would your key concerns or goals for the elementary schools be the next 5 to 10 years?
So thanks. So I did mention the school building project in my opening statement, and I was going to mention it again in my closing, so I'll take this opportunity to do that. I think that the school building project is the major significant issue before the school committee over the next several years. The school committee has started a community engagement process that I think is an excellent process, and by the way, there are 2 more community engagement sessions that will be happening on April 12th, 9 a.m. at the Senior Center and 7 p.m. at Sheehan. And I really encourage folks to attend those sessions, or also check out the Media Center. They've done a great job in filming the tours and other things. So my goals for the schools would be to engage in this community process, to hear what people think about what we should do next about these 3 schools. As Maya's already told you, they need significant work. Questions would be whether to put the money into doing the work in each of those schools. Not sure that makes sense. Deerfield, where our kids went, is so tiny, 17 kids in a classroom. We really need to look at that. So there's a lot of things we need to look at as a community, think about, talk about. Please be engaged in that process and help us as we think through those issues.
Okay, that leads neatly into the next question I received, and Ms. McCarthy, we'll start with you and go back. What is your position on small neighborhood schools versus larger schools?
So I think this is a great question, and I think it feeds into the larger question about the issues the school committee is looking at. So it's not just a building project. It's a project that looks at the long-term success of our schools. So are we going to have a big school with larger classrooms? You know, Martha Jones has, 35 kids in a classroom, and they just asked, is it Martha Jones or Hanlon that has the larger kids? That they just separated the classrooms. They were concerned about the size of the classroom, so they just created 2 separate classrooms. Mm-hmm. So I think the school committee is very committed to ensuring that the classroom size is appropriate for the kids. They've got guidelines on how big the classroom sizes would be. So in whatever project we decide to go forward with, whether it's renovating the 3 schools, again, I think there's some challenges with that, building a larger school. The issue is ensuring that the environment is appropriate for our kids. The school committee does that. It looks at class sizes all the time. It looks at supports in the class sizes. So that the issue is ensuring that whatever we do, the sizes are appropriate for the grade and the school and the teachers that we have.
Plotkin.
So I actually experienced both of these systems. When I started in kindergarten, it was a neighborhood-based schools, and in 3rd grade, they changed it. So you had K through 3 in one school and 4 through 6 in another school, and those were separated based on the size of the town. I can tell you frankly, I didn't really notice a difference as a student between my small, the neighborhood school and the separation. But I will say that the next phase of this building school project will look at that issue, but at also all of the other issues together. So some of the things that we will do during the feasibility phase of this project is to look at what size are our current schools. We'll look at estimates to say what will our schools look like in 10 years and what size school should we be building for 10 years from now. It is a big discussion. People feel very strongly about the schools that they went to and the schools that their kids go to. And whether we stay at 5 schools or we go down to 4 or we go down to 3, I don't think anyone has that information right now. I think that I'd really like the town to move into the next phase of this MSBA process, because that's where we get the consultants in, and that's where we do all of the environmental and site studies, and all of the studies come through, and we gather that data, we look at it all, and based on all of that, we decide what's the right thing for our town and what's the right thing for our students.
Okay. Next one, we'll start with Ms. Plotkin and go back. How much or what is your experience with special education in Westwood, and would you advocate for any changes in the special education system?
So I think Westwood has a very strong special education program. My oldest son was on an IEP, so I've had personal experience with it. He did come off of the IEP when he was in 2nd grade, and luckily was still able to receive services as a member of the general education population. This is not true for a lot of school systems. So Westwood is really lucky in the fact that our specialists are able to provide kids in the general population with special services if they deem it necessary. As a member of the school committee, I would work with the Special Education Commission to really try and understand what challenges they see as parents of kids with special ed. And I would like to work closer with them to really try and synergize those two groups. But I do think that we're starting with a really strong foundation, and I think that it can really only get better from here.
McCarthy?
We have a great special education program here in Westwood. I think the school committee's done a fabulous job with it. I can't, so I would support it 100%.
Okay. And one last question, Ms. McCarthy, going back. Where do you see the Westwood schools regarding the transgender spectrum?
So I think that there is a lot of activity in Westwood right now to support transgender kids, as well as gay kids, bisexual kids. I feel very strongly about supporting that effort and supporting that effort in the schools. That's what I would say about that.
I agree.
Ms. Plugin?
I agree. I think kids these days are so much more aware of these issues than we as adults were at their age, or even we as adults are today. I think for kids, these things aren't a big deal, but to us, to a lot of adults in our community, they are. I'm hoping the trend is going toward more what the kids believe and not what we believe. I also think transgender is an issue, but it's really a spectrum. You know, you can have kids as young as 5 who are struggling with issues of gender identity, and you need to be able to support those kids just as easily as you support someone in high school who's wondering whether or not they should come out or who's questioning their sexual orientation. To me, it's about the student. It's not about who they think they are or who society thinks they should be. It's about supporting that student and making sure that student feels respected and cared for in the school environment. So I'm hoping that Westwood is going to be trending that way.
I'd just like to make one more comment if I could. We're a 2-mom family. So we are very supportive of, kids who come from all sorts of families and who experience life in all sorts of ways. And we felt really welcome here in Westwood, and we're really proud to be here.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you two a pass on our how would you like constituents to contact you if you'll each address that in your closing statement, all right? So, Ms. McCarthy, let's see, I've forgotten which direction I'm going in. So, Ms. McCarthy, your closing statement, and then Ms. Plotkin.
Sure, great. So I am so impressed with the work that the leaders of this town have done. It makes Westwood such a welcoming and wonderful community. And I'm really hopeful that I could contribute to the work that the leaders of this town have already done. I have been considering a run for school committee since the summer, have been attending school committee meetings since the fall, enjoy the meetings and enjoy the conversations there. I did want to say, and I'm just going to reiterate what I said before, there are ways that you all can be involved as well. Please do stay involved in the conversation about the school building project. It is really critical that the community be involved in those conversations. So come to those meetings or stay involved by looking at the media center. Finally, please come to town meeting and vote for continuation of the school building project process. Town meeting must vote this town meeting for us to allow us to continue that project with the MSBA. Please do come and vote. Thank you very much for your consideration. I really appreciate it. Please come and vote on April 24th as well. Thank you.
How can they contact you?
Oh, you can call my cell, you can email, whatever's most comfortable for you is how you should reach out to me, and I will respond.
Thank you. All right, I didn't mean to interrupt the applause. Ms. Plotkin.
First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting us and putting on this event. And I'd also like to thank the members of the community who came out to listen to us and to our positions. Civic engagement is critical for democracy, and so I thank you all for your time and your effort today. I am so grateful for the education that I received in Westwood, and I support and I believe in the school system so strongly that I'm raising my own children here. Between my hometown knowledge, my professional experience, and my commitment to public service, I believe I have the right qualifications for the school committee, and I hope I can really make a difference in the schools and in the town. I hope to have your support on Tuesday, April 24th, but in the meantime, I would love to hear from you. If you want to reach me, you can go to my website, mayaplotkin.com. You can email, you can text, or you can stop me in the street, however you want to reach me. I'm really interested in what people are thinking about and talking about with respect to our schools. But regardless of your affiliation, please vote on April 24th. Your voice is important. Your voice should be heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
both
you.
very much.
Yeah.
All right, a final race for selectmen. We have two candidates for one position, Nancy Hyde and Ellen Larkin Rawlings. All right, for an opening statement, let's start with Ellen Larkin Rawlings.
I'm Ellen Larkin Rawlings, and I want to be one of your selectmen. I grew up in Westwood in a family that was very involved with public service, and it's always been important to me. We returned because my husband and I want our daughter Adia to have access to the great schools and community that I remember. I have 24 years' experience in the business world, 15 years of that managing high-performance teams. I'm involved with several groups in town, and I regularly attend meetings of several boards. I want to know what's going on in town and participate in those conversations. If elected, I will provide a fresh perspective and a new voice that represents our residents. The last few years, we've spent over $31 million on municipal improvements, and we're looking at several additional projects. I absolutely support progress and investment in our resources, but we must ensure that continued growth does not come at too high a cost, both financially and to our town's character. Tax revenue has increased as a result of University Station, but the average tax bill has still increased a total of about $700 over the past 5 years. Many residents are asking why we've not fully realized the residential tax relief promised from University. Last year, Brigham and Women's paid New England Development $8.25 million for a 4-acre parcel at University, of which only 38,000 square feet will be taxed at the full commercial rate. The pilot agreement negotiated and approved by the selectmen brings Westwood $300,000 payment instead of taxes to cover 8 years, and subsequent tax payments at 25% of the commercial rate per the IRS for nonprofits. I will work to ensure that any further deals requiring the board's approval bring us the highest possible financial return. We also need to make more strides in providing ways for our seniors to stay in Westwood. The Aid to the Elderly and Disabled Relief Fund is a really wonderful start, especially Selectman Walsh and Mr. Ahern's suggestion of a donation match from the Selectmen's Reserve Fund. We still need to explore creative solutions, potentially work with the Housing Authority's nonprofit arm or other nonprofits to help provide more and better opportunities that would also help maintain our 10% SHI goal in a meaningful way. Thank you.
And Ms. Hyde.
Hi, thank you. I'm Nancy Hyde, and I'm running for re-election to Westwood's Board of Selectmen, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, April 24th. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting together today's candidates forum. This has really been a very good event. My husband and I are 30-year residents of this great town. Our 3 children attended Westwood schools and are now college graduates. My twins, Nathan and Sarah, graduated from Brown University just last spring, and my older daughter, Carrie, graduated from Rhode Island School of Design. I myself am a graduate of Brown University. I have a degree in economics, and I have an MBA in finance from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. In addition to my 15 years on the Board of Selectmen, my professional experience has been in the fields of portfolio management and economic development. And I'd also like to add that I'm a trustee at my alma mater, and I previously served as president of its alumni association. I've always believed in being an active member of this community. I began with serving on the town's Finance Commission and spent 2 years as chair of that commission, and I was also elected to the Planning Board. I've served as Martha Jones PTO president, a Thurston Site Council member, and co-president of the Westwood Educational Foundation. We have a very strong town by many measures. We have a AAA bond rating, we have wonderfully successful schools, and we have an award-winning town management team. We are also very caring and compassionate, and we have a unique ability to support our oldest seniors and those with disabilities through our Aid to the Elderly and Disability Fund. We step up for our residents who suffer from tragedies and life-altering hardship, and we value each other. I hear from Westwood residents regularly what a great town we have and how much they love living here. And we owe it to those who live here and are well into their senior years, all the way down to our newest and youngest residents, to continue to make Westwood a place we are proud to call home. As your selectwoman, I hope to continue to serve on your behalf.
Thank you. All right, got some hard questions here. We'll start out with a hard one. Please, and I guess I will start out with Ms. Hyde and work back. Please tell us your opinion of the bifurcated tax rate. Do you think the current rate is appropriate?
Well, the bifurcated tax rate is essentially a split tax rate that taxes commercial property owners differently than residential property owners. Right now, commercial property owners pay 29 cents on every $1,000 of value, where residential property owners pay $15 on every $1,000 of value. What that has allowed us to do is essentially subsidize residential taxpayers' tax bills with the larger payment made by the commercial property owners. So just to give you a couple more numbers, right now, commercial property makes up 15% of the entire value of real estate in this town. But they pay over 20% of the taxes that come from real estate. It's a really important asset that we have the ability to have a split tax rate. It's a formulaic thing that's determined, and we've been able to accomplish this through things like the University Station development, which bolstered our real estate commercial tax base.
All right, Ms. Rawlings, would you like to address that question?
Sure. Mrs. Hyde explained.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Got it mixed up. Ms. Hyde.
No,
No,
you were right.
you were right.
You were right in the first place.
Okay.
Since Mrs. Hyde already addressed the explanation of what the split tax rate is, I think we're currently at about 1.7. The cap is 1.75. So I think that does make us business friendly in that we're not at the absolute top of what we could be taxing our commercial tenants and property owners. So I think that does make us business friendly. I think it is important that we maintain our split tax rate because it does afford tax relief to the residential constituents. One thing that I personally am concerned about is we need to maintain a certain ratio between the number of commercial properties and the number of residential. We have limited control over by right residential developments. So one thing that I find encouraging is one of the recent changes that's going to be made to the development agreement at University Station that will reduce the amount of new residential development there. With a new commercial property, it'll have to be 25 to 75%. And I would suggest perhaps looking at that in some of the other multiple use districts as well, because we don't have a lot of land left in town that we can develop and that's in zoned for commercial. So I would encourage us to, sorry, just got dark. I would encourage us to potentially reevaluate some of those allowances in some of our other multi-use districts as well, so that we can maintain our split tax rate effectively.
And that leads into the next question. You may already, each of you have addressed this to some degree. Has the university project been a success, and how does it affect your view of economic development going forward? I'll start with you and come back, Ms. Rawlings.
I think it's been a success in the sense that it's generated revenue. We've been able to put a lot of that revenue into our schools, and that's always a good thing. It's alleviated our tax burden to some degree, but again, our taxes are still going up. I have been asked by many residents, we thought we were going to have more of a relief. Why is that? I think that's a question we need to have an answer to. As far as it being successful, I do like the convenience of having the Wegmans and the Target. I would like to see some more smaller businesses find a way to attract them, if that's possible. So yeah, I think it's a mixed bag.
Okay. Hyde?
Yes, in terms of University Station, many of you know that that was a long-term, hard-fought, much process and planning development, mixed-use development. A few measures of its success. It has already netted the town over $5 million in new tax growth. It's not fully built out, but it has already met what was originally projected to be the new tax revenue to the town. So it will continue to do more. It's also generated to date over $900,000 of meal tax revenue to the town. So annually, we're getting about $340,000, $350,000. So the cumulative, since the restaurants had started operations, is approaching $1 million. That's added revenue that has allowed us to make investments in some capital projects. We actually have an article going to town meeting that will spend some of those dollars. Other measures of success, when we look at what University Station is comprised of, mixed use means a lot of things. In the case of University Station, it means retail, office, residential, hotel, hospital use. If you measure the success of that, the residential has contributed to our affordable housing inventory. The retail has provided places for people to go, to dine, to shop. Think of the hospital coming online. I was at Fox Hill Village this week where the director announced to the community of a couple of hundred people in the room that Brigham and Women's would be opening this fall. And there was that's great. He said, we're already working with them to talk about what services will be available, and they're sure that the people in that community, as well as people throughout our entire community and the region, will benefit from having that. So that's another measure of success. The hotel provides people places to stay when people come in town to visit, etc. I think we've all experienced it in different ways, but I look at it as it's just been tremendous. And I want to add one more thing. In terms of what the revenue has allowed us to do, we've been able to build a new police station and a new fire station without going for an override. And that is a huge accomplishment. Those are very important buildings to our community. And we did so directly because of the success of University Station.
All right, Ms. Hyde, we'll start with you and go back. Switching gears a little bit, how would you balance your vision for development with that of conservation in Westwood?
Well, any development that we ever consider has to give consideration to conservation. Back to University Station, when that was in the proposal stages, even with the predecessor project of Westwood Station, what was so important was that's where our well water resources are. Any project that was done there had to respect the fact that we had our precious water resource right there along University Avenue. So whenever any development comes forward, it has to be reviewed for its impact on wetlands. It has to be reviewed for its impact on our water supply, if that's applicable. It also needs to reflect our goal to preserve open space and create green space. So I'll give you one more example. When we planned for the new police station, which you all can see is now built, and the old building is coming down, what we introduced into that was the front part where the old station had been will have a substantial amount of green space. We need some added parking spaces. We will have that too. But that will be beautiful along High Street to be able to drive by and have green space. And the plan, and hopefully it comes together this summer, is that the farmers market will locate there. So it will be a gathering place and a great resource to the community.
Ms. Rawlings, how would you balance conservation against development?
I'm a huge fan of conservation. I do some work with the Environmental Action Committee, so I'm a huge proponent of being environmentally conscious and smart. One concern that I have about our town is that we have a lot of rock under the soil, so our drainage is subpar at best. So I think we need to be very careful when we add more impermeable surfaces like paved surfaces, and even rooftops count towards that. We need to be very mindful of that. I'd like to see us be a little bit more stringent when development proposals that we have a say in come forward and impose potentially more restrictions on those kind of things and use the space to our best possible ability. I'll echo what Mrs. Hyde said about green space. I like that we're seeing more. I think we could even incorporate more green space into our developments. I know there's a requirement for it in the bylaws for special permit applications. I think we should be pushing for that harder. And I also echo what I've heard from many residents, concerns about the wells, because we are building very close to our water supply and the watershed. And one thing that I found of concern last year was there was a situation where it was brought to the town's attention where the developers were using a substance to salt the parking lot, which was salt, which they weren't supposed to be using. So I think we need to be really tight with those violations. We need to enforce penalties if people are using substances in those areas that is not appropriate and in violation of their contract.
Okay, starting again with Ms. Rawlings. What is your plan for providing affordable housing in Westwood?
I love this question. I think if possible, it would be good if we could up, in the bylaws currently, 10% is mandated by law of every new development to have non-by right developments to include affordable housing. I believe our current bylaws requires 15%, so we're gaining a unit or two here and there, which is a good step in the right direction. If we could raise that maybe a little bit more, not to the point where a developer would be unwilling to want to come and try and build something here, but it would still net us a couple of more units. I think that would be a positive thing to do. Another part of affordable housing that's of interest to me is not just the letter of the law and maintaining our 10%, but it's also the spirit of the law, creating real opportunities for people who would most benefit from them. Some of our neighbors have investigated options of partnering with nonprofit developers and building housing that's targeted, say, senior housing or young families. I would be interested in investigating some of that. If you're partnering with a nonprofit developer, some of the market value, the need for a commercial developer to make a certain level of profit is lessened or not there at all. Those are the kind of things that I would like to see us investigate to further our goal of not just maintaining our 10%, which is very important so that we don't find ourselves subject to a potential hostile 40B development, but also to further the spirit of what that law was actually intended to do, create opportunities.
Ms. Hyde, your thoughts on affordable housing?
So a little bit of a history lesson. The town for about 20 years has been working to create affordable housing and provide alternative housing to the people in the community. That goes back to Chase Estates development, Cedar Hill. We have, up until recently, our two senior housing apartment complexes, Westwood Glen and Highland Glen, both contributed to our affordable housing count. It's a technical analysis that gives you the affordable housing inventory. We recently lost the ability to include Westwood Glen in that count because it was not originally created to have the affordable housing in perpetuity. The property sold and the new owners did not want to keep it in have affordable units available for the residents. We also received news through state legal cases that informed us that the Bridges at Epic, the memory care facility, which we originally had understood appropriately at the time, the units were not counted in our housing inventory. That's changed. So the combination of Westwood Glen changing and Bridges at Epic being included in our housing inventory has led us very currently to be concerned that we may lose being over 10% when the next census is done in 2020. So we are being very proactive. It has included changing our zoning previously to require more affordable housing units when developers are proposing residential development. It has also included us taking action that we're bringing to this town meeting to have a $1 million appropriation that will allow us to invest in individual housing units, some that exist in town through our housing authority that we want to convert from rental to ownership affordable units. That will be one way we'll contribute to increasing our affordable housing count. There is the possibility, up to the town, whether or not they'll agree, that should a development go forward in Islington, we have an opportunity to add more affordable housing units through that. So we're already being very proactive, but this is an ongoing continuum of work. We want to provide alternative housing. It's the right thing to do, but we also want to do it under our terms. If we fall below 10%, any community in the state, if it is below 10%, excuse me, it would mean that unfriendly 40B developments, housing developments, could come in and circumvent our local zoning. That's not the position we want to be in. We want to be in a control position. We want to do it right for the town.
Okay, and again, starting with Ms. Hyde, what would you suggest to deal with the growing traffic congestion on Route 109?
It's
In 10 words or less.
the perennial problem. I would say it's grown, and something that is. The good news is we are in a great location in close proximity to Boston. The bad news is we are in a great location in close proximity to Boston. All that being said, we have to make the best of a situation. I was actually at a gathering on the campaign trail, and somebody said to me, I said, what is it you want me to know? What do you want changed? And the person said, close off 109, don't let people cut through Westwood. So I said, and I always try to listen, and I said, where should we direct them to? And she said, well, where I think we should goes through wetlands, so I don't think we can do that. That's it's our reality. It's tough. And what we try to do is we try to focus on public safety as a high priority. We have issues where cars cut through different neighborhoods. What have we done? We've created traffic calming because the cars were going through residential streets, zooming through where children were getting on the school bus. We do what we can with what we have. Geography is what it is. We always look when there are new developments at how to remediate where we can. That's a high priority when the planning board looks at proposals. We will continue to do this, but we will continue to be located where we are, and we have to realize that there are limits to what we can do, but we should never stop trying to make it the best, safest community we can as it relates to traffic.
Rawlings, do you have a handy solution to this?
Yeah, I'm giggling because it is the perennial problem. I've been hearing about traffic on 109 since I was a child, and I don't think it's getting any better anytime soon. I agree with Mrs. Hyde that it is something that we should absolutely be addressing as much as possible with any new development, because development, while it will add volume potentially any place we're putting it, it is also an opportunity to try and mitigate absolutely what we may be adding and even potentially what's already problematic. One thing that I heard talk of, and I'm not sure if it panned out, was looking at the timing of some of the traffic lights on 109 and some of the, not just the lights on 109, but from some of the side streets, and trying to work on some of the timing there, see if that could improve some of the flow. I don't think we're going to be able to do much about the volume, but if there's even small things like that, which probably isn't super expensive to reprogram the lights and put them on a schedule based on a study that makes more sense, that might help alleviate some of the problem. But I do agree, it's an ongoing issue. I don't think there's an easy solve. We're an attractive town. People are going to keep coming here. But we should at least look at some of those options that might take the edge off some of the problems we're currently experiencing before we add to them.
And here we have a good wind-up question. We'll start with Ms. Rawlings. Getting things accomplished is easy when everyone agrees. What is your greatest accomplishment that required you to navigate different points of view to bring people together to get a project over the finish line?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to harken back to my days at Lotus. Lotus had this model called high performance teams. I think it's popular in the software industry, which is where I come from. My background is quality assurance engineering, which is very detail oriented and very having to work within time constraints to bring out the best possible product that you can on the most responsible budget as fast as humanly possible. But you work with lots of different groups. You work with developers, you work with graphic designers, you work with people who each have their own individual stakes in this project and their own priorities. And I was leading a project at Lotus to build a database, which sounds simple. To build a database. that was going to serve 2 or 3 different departments and manage a lot of data. So it sounds simple. It should have been simple. It sounds like it would be an easy thing to achieve consensus on. Everybody had their own idea about what we should be doing. The graphic designer's priorities were how it looked. The developer's priorities were fancy features. The quality assurance priorities were it has to work perfectly. I had to negotiate with all these different stakeholders to get them to come to consensus that it was never going to be 100% perfect, but what's an acceptable level of not perfect that we can release to the world and it will still be all right. With the graphic designers, that the look and feel can be subjective to some degree. We have to reach consensus on what's appropriate and fits the branding and meets the needs. And with the quality assurance people, yes, with the developers, that we don't need every single flashy feature, that we can make it solid, it needs to work, it needs to meet the needs of what it's meant to do, but we can't go over budget just to make it extra snazzy in whatever particular way they were thinking about that day. And we managed to get the database built and rolled out, and Lotus no longer exists, but I would like to think somewhere in IBM that is still in use, and we made it by our schedule and within our budget constraints.
Ms. Hyde.
Picking a project. There are 3 I want to mention and one I'm going to speak about specifically. University Station, we've talked about a lot already, so that was a huge project that I was intimately involved with through a lengthy predecessor project, Westwood Station, a recession, and then ultimately University Station. Another one that projects that are very visible are both the fire and police station, where I chaired the public safety task force that worked on those. But the one I want to speak about is the one we're sitting in and the building next door. So the long saga is the town aspired to build a new library. Where? Where the Colburn School sat, of course. The Colburn School sat empty, but it was a historic building. So what do? Not every project is linear and follows a nice path. There are stops and starts and reconnoitering and coming up with another plan, and that's what we needed to do. So years of planning to determine what we wanted for a library overlapped with years of discussion of what we were going to do with the Colburn School. At one point, we brought the Colburn School to town meeting for a possible sale. It did not pass, and we needed to sharpen our pencils and figure out again what we would do. And we had competing interest groups. We had a historic commission that very much wanted to preserve the building of the Colburn School in its location, which would have been right here. And we had the State Historic Commission that said, we want you to preserve it, but we'll allow it to be moved next door. We had the library commissioners who said, we have a grant ready for you for your new library, but we have to make sure the State Historic Commission is on board. They're a party to this decision making. And we had the local library trustees and library users and library director who said, we really need a library and it's best suited site-wise for where the Colburn School is. So we had to work with everybody, including our town taxpayers, to make a case that we were addressing all these issues. And working with all the groups, working with the community, we were ultimately able to gain approval. So some of you were here back then. We took the Colburn School, we moved it to the back of the lot, parked it there for a couple of years. We built this beautiful new building right here. We tore down the old library, which was non-ADA compliant, had the children's facility in the basement, only had 1 bathroom in the basement. It was a building that really didn't meet the needs of our community. It was subpar and old. And we were able to tear down that old building, and then over the course of a week or so, watch the old Colburn School get moved next door. We had an agreement, and town meeting approved us selling that old building, and it was restored by a party, a developer who had a historic architect who proposed reorienting the front of the building to look right at the library. So we have this wonderful circle here. All said and done, we preserved the building, We built a library that is beyond fabulous. Thank you, Mary. Good job. And we are sitting here today having accomplished all that with the community's support. And it ended up being a win-win situation that took a lot of work. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that work and working closely with other town boards and commissions and the community.
Right, that is the last question. You'll each have 1 minute to give a closing statement. Again, in that statement, please include how your constituents can contact you. So we'll move over to Ms. Rawlings and then back to Ms. Hyde.
As your selectman, I will make an impact on the issues that affect you and your quality of life. I believe my responsibility as your selectman is to serve our community. I'll work towards reasonable, responsible growth. I want to hear your ideas and work collaboratively with our town boards. As a parent of a school-aged child, I understand how important it is for the Board of Selectmen to work cohesively with the school committee and the district administration. I've also participated in enough planning board, finance commission, and other meetings to see how critical it is that all of our boards and departments are communicating. We will all work together for Westwood. I'll leverage the experience I've accumulated working with budgets, deadlines, personnel, and day-to-day challenges to help guide our town as we explore our municipal building options, staff our town services, and tackle our spending and taxes. I thank the League for hosting this event. I thank you all for attending, and I asked for your vote on April 24th. I want the opportunity to serve you and our community, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, everyone, for coming here today and taking time out of your busy schedules. And I want to thank the voters of Westwood for the confidence that they've placed in me as your selectman. I want to say how lucky we really are to live in this community. Westwood is a small town, but we've achieved remarkable success. This is all part of a long-term strategic plan that I've worked very hard to help shape during my time as selectman. It is a plan that has sought to control spending, hold taxes in check, provide for everyone from those in our schools today to those that graduated from them many years ago, to making this place we call home as safe as possible. I've done all this while I've also worked to maintain the character of our town. I think the single best validation of the strength of this town is when those who grew up here, moved away, find their way back, including my opponent, but also including my children, their friends and contemporaries who see Westwood as the model of where to live and raise your family. And I am up to the challenge of maintaining Westwood's strengths and moving it into the future. So I ask you, are you better off today than you were 15 years ago? I believe the answer is yes. And if you have arrived more recently, you came here because Westwood is indeed a great place to call home. I ask all of you for your vote on Tuesday, April 24th. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. I think you have a score of excellent candidates to choose from.
I also would like to reiterate that I thank you for coming. An engaged citizenry is our best asset in town. Please remember to vote on April 24th, and also thank you very much to Wendy Manns for her services here as moderator. Thank you very much.